obviously the score didn't really matter. 63-21. Shout out to a lot of Raiders players that played really well. Aidan O'Connell, 4 touchdown passes in this game, was distributing the wealth all over the place. A lot of good defensive performances. But you and I were talking a little bit before we hit record here. The main story has to be the fact that the Chargers just looked lifeless. And in a season where Brandon Staley's been on the hot seat, this was about as bad of a primetime game as you could possibly have for a guy that's still coaching for his job.
His seat is in a sauna on the surface of the sun at this point, I would assume. You just had lackluster effort. You had, not making good tackles in space, or, the rookie Trey Tucker out of Cincinnati, who did have a great game, but just burns Derwin James off the line. He doesn't really run full speed to recover on that first touchdown. So, even the leaders of the defense, the guys that bring pride every single week, they weren't really showing up and playing well. But also, I do want to shout out. I know they just got shut out, but I've been impressed with Bo Hardegree, the interim offensive coordinator for the Raiders, pretty much since he took over. Just dropping Aidan O'Connell's, average time to throw way down, doing a lot of different things. He had the 2 Jacoby Myers passes, the second one on a return motion for the touchdown to Devontae Adams. You had play action where Aidan O'Connell had 2 of his 4 touchdown passes. He had a direct snap to Brandon Bolden it was just, there was a lot of creativity, a lot going on there. And I think he's done a good job and brought a lot of different looks over the last month or so.
Yeah, and shout out to Antonio Pierce as well, right? I mean, I don't think that the Raiders are going to be Super Bowl contenders, obviously, all of a sudden. But the fact that team was playing so poorly, and let's remember, before Josh McDaniels got fired, they were kind of in a similar situation, right? I mean, they thought they might have fired him last offseason, and then the reports come out as all right, the Raiders are actually kind of cash poor. That's why they couldn't do it. It wasn't because they really loved McDaniels. It was maybe they didn't even have the money to do it. So you go into this season, and he's already on the hot seat. And before he ended up getting fired, they were sort of similar to what we saw from the Chargers last night. They were teetering on that edge of players were almost ready to give up on this thing and essentially stop playing for the overall goal and start basically just playing for themselves. And I don't say that selfishly. I mean, future job status, contracts, whatever it is. They know the team's probably not going anywhere under McDaniels and Ziegler. And so it was just kind of an interesting parallel how the Raiders were there a month and a half ago, and Antonio Pierce takes over, and you can tell that there is just this new fire amongst the group. Obviously, Aidan O'Connell starting as well. And O'Connell, you go back to Purdue, gunslinger, man. 2 years ago, that guy had an elite PFF grade. He was one of the most intriguing quarterbacks that I had going into the year of last year's 2023 class. His 2023 regular season ended up being way too up and down. There were too many turnover worthy plays, so he was a little bit too reckless. But you understand why you take a chance on this guy, because here he is in a situation where Garoppolo's hurt. He's got to come in, and he's basically coming in with house money, right? Fifth round pick, day 3 pick, and they basically just say to him, "Hey, man, we didn't really have a spark on offense. Go see what you can do out there." And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So you could see he's not afraid to push the ball deep down the field. He's not afraid to go to targets of all different shapes, speeds, sizes, whatever it is. And to me, it was very, I don't know if ironic is the word, but what the Chargers were last night felt like the Raiders team right before McDaniels got fired. And you make a change, and it obviously makes all the difference in the world, and these players start believing in it again, because the big thing was that these Chargers guys just do not believe right now. That was very, very obvious.
I think it's probably one of the cooler points, and probably points to the parity of the NFL schedule and how week to week you never know, any given Sunday, all of that. But even at the highest level with the best talent, frankly, if a team comes in motivated with juice, they can beat the best team in the league, right? There still is that element to where, if you're in an NBA game against, LeBron James in his prime, you could be coming in with the best attitude and mentality ever, but you're probably still taking an L if that team shows up as well. It's just, it just shows kind of the drive that can go into a football game. But yeah, to Aidan O'Connell, what impressed me most last night too was, I think a lot of rookie quarterbacks, even if they have it on college tape, they struggle with different trajectories, different speeds, different types of throws. And I think it's always what has impressed me about CJ Stroud in Houston too. And you saw last night, the touch pass to Jacoby Myers for the touchdown. even some of the screens and quick outs where it was just good for yards after the catch, like good ball placement, but also just like knowing the correct velocity to put on certain passes. Like you said, targeting everyone. Another
Yeah.
rookie, Michael Meyer, I think every catch of his was either a first down on third down or the touchdown pass. Like all these high leverage, high moment, really embodying the Jason Witten comps that he's had. All these just like important plays. Had a couple good blocks in the game too. But yeah, like it was a impressive performance from a young guy that should have the job the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And of course, he's not going to prevent them making a move, but in a similar manner to like a Sam Howell we talk about, like they have a guy that is capable of starting NFL games with a 5th-round pick, and they can kind of go from there and figure things out from there.
Yeah. And I think O'Connell's not afraid to fail, right? And I think that that's a massive trait to have as a backup quarterback and as a young quarterback, because we see a lot of these younger quarterbacks kind of get in there and they're scared to fail. So you don't even see fully like what they can do because they're so reserved in their abilities, because I can't make the wrong read. I can't turn it over here. I can't be just a second late, or I'm in the NFL now. Like that's going to turn into a turnover. Then I'm never going to play again. And they just have this fear of failure that outweighs their confidence. And for O'Connell, I had him as, I figured that he'd be an early day 3 pick, but even in my scouting notes of him last year, I said, this is the quarterback in this class that I would draft first at the beginning of day 3 as a backup and a developmental quarterback, because we have seen that he's not afraid to fail. He had the elite season as a junior, and then going into his senior year, it was very up and down, but he never stopped throwing the ball. From people that have coach with him and some of his trainers, like throughout the draft process, talking to me about him. They're like, man, this kid's just confident all the time. And I was like, that's the attribute that I want. And that allows you to be able to stand out early on in the NFL. So it's great to see. On the flip side, and I'm glad that we obviously talked about some of the positives for the Raiders, because I don't want to take anything away from them. But outlook for this Chargers team, we mentioned like we don't think Brandon Staley is going to be the head coach of this team very much longer. What do they do next? Do you have any sort of direction in mind for like guys that they might go after? Do you think it's going to be offensive coach to pair with Justin Herbert? Because the rest of this roster, man, there's not many players on the Chargers that you go, yeah, we got to keep this guy. I feel as though the next head coach that comes in here with Tom Telesco, or assuming that Tom Telesco stay. Okay, we're not assuming Tom Telesco stay. Okay, whoever it is, whoever's going to come in and have their hand on this roster, they're going to have a lot of flexibility. There's not a lot of, you can't move these players, contracts, whatever it is. So what do you think about the long-term outlook with the Chargers, given what we saw last night?
Yeah, so I'll jump into my, shaking my head there. Look, I get that he is the head coach, so you obviously talk more about head coaches than GMs. I get that some people hate him because he went for 4th downs 3 years ago, and they just like that. From that moment on, they just decided not to like Brandon Staley. And like Telesco, I wrote about this for a general manager kind of ranking article I did. The Chargers in his 10-year tenure, he was there in 2013. There's been one player taken with a pick outside the top 100 ever that returned to the roster after their rookie deal. It's actually Easton Stick.
Oh, man, that's bad.
Yeah, it's actually Easton Stick, which is funny. So we saw him play last night. And
oh, no way. Oh,
yes,
boy.
that is the only player in the history of his tenure that has returned to the team after 4 years of a rookie deal that was not taken with a top 100 draft pick. And then, his trade ups have all been in the top 75 picks. It was Melvin Gordon, Jeremiah Atu-Ochu, Kenneth Murray, and Manti Te'o. He traded up for all those guys in the top 50. He's never traded down. So yeah, with all due respect, I think he's worse than Staley, and I think he should be fired more so than Brandon Staley should be fired. So anyway, that's why I was shaking my head there. I do not think he's built a competent roster at all here. And so the second piece is, you said, where are they going? They have one of the worst salary cap situations in the entire NFL going forward next year. Between just Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Khalil Mack, and Joey Bosa, you're talking like $120 million cap hits for those 4 players. So I would imagine like hopefully Mike Williams recovers, gets healthy. I'm not commenting on that piece, but is he going to be back next year? I don't know. Khalil Mack is having a resurgent 2023. Obviously, leads the NFL in sacks. He actually had 5 pressures last night, which led all players on both sides of the football. But like, is he going to be back for his age 32, 33 season? I'm not sure. So yeah, where they're going is they have the franchise quarterback. He's on the second contract. and then they need to fix everything else. Like the offensive line's pretty good. You got some pieces there. But yeah, like the thing with me with them is there's a lot of names there. Like if you do a dude off, a dude draft, whatever, like
yeah,
oh yeah,
a dude off.
Yeah, like people always talk about stuff like that. Like, yeah, you can name a bunch of names.
A dude duel.
Yes, like Joey Bosa hasn't been Joey Bosa for a couple years. Derwin James, I think this year is having a very poor season. As I mentioned, like even their big names, their big guys are late 20s and not playing good football or have had bad injuries. So anyway, yeah, long answer short, where they're going is you got to start this entire thing over and build around Justin Herbert again, with Rashawn Slater, Asante Samuel, like a couple pieces there, but very few.
Yeah, it's there's just, like I said, there's not a lot of guys that you would look at this roster and be like, yeah, these are the players that I would want to stay for a lot of the reasons that you highlighted. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Chargers. This isn't the last time on the show we're going to talk about the Chargers, because in the next segment, we are going to talk about intriguing teams for 2023 or the 2024 offseason. And guess what? They're one of them. So we'll get into that a little bit deeper.